Good morning, live, Caskey Live friends. It's Tuesday, not Thursday, just so you're straight. I wanted to go live today and talk about something that we're going to be working on tomorrow at our Masterclass. I hope you're enrolled for that. If you're not, make sure you go to billcaskey.com/masterclass. We'll put a couple things on the screen here and enroll. It's free, it's 45 minutes, and we're going to be talking about not necessarily the how, but the what. And the what is, what can I do to scale my business and achieve my goals for 2024? It's that time of year when we're kind of in the middle of deploying our plan, and sometimes it becomes a little like, okay, I'm feeling like I'm going to have to work really hard. So we're going to talk about this concept of leverage tomorrow. Let me put it on the screen here real quick. How to use leverage to grow your business and income in 2024. It starts tomorrow at noon Eastern, January 31st. You can go to billcaskey.com/masterclass to register. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the most unsexiest of topics. I know there's a lot of sexy topics I talk about. I know you guys are always sending me emails and saying, please, Bill, talk about something sexy. Well, process is what our plan is today. How do you reinvent your process in order to compel prospects to follow it and to buy from you at the end without manipulating, without being creepy, without being condescending, and without stalking people, because I don't like to be stalked, and I know you don't either, and prospects don't either. But I want to start with a concept that, again, we're going to talk about tomorrow. Let me give you a little preview here today, because I want you to see how process fits in with this. The fact is that, I've got all sorts of wires here. The fact is, can you see this? Yeah. We're going to talk about leverage tomorrow. And leverage has several components to it. Can you see that? I think you can. One is the downward force on the lever, meaning actions, activities. This is your actions. It's your effort. What kind of effort are you putting into lifting this? And this, the payload here, are your goals and your income, the money you make, the money you earn, the impact you have on people's lives, namely customers. That's part of this uptick here. So you're putting pressure down here, and you're getting better results here. What did I say the other day? That this is the maximization of effort by the modification of action. I'm sorry, the maximization of output by the modification of input. Maximization output, modification input. So at some point you have to rest this lever on a thing, and this thing is called a fulcrum. Some of you remember this from 8th grade physics. A fulcrum. And a fulcrum is the thing that allows you to lift this heavy load, minimize your actions, maximize your outputs. So what is the fulcrum for you? Well, the fulcrum is assets. Assets. The number one asset you have that's kind of the, I'm sorry, I'm not writing bigger. I'll try to write bigger here, is time. Time's your number one. It's a currency. It's a currency on which all your other assets are built. If you want to play the piano, you'll learn how to play the piano. You and I start today. Neither one of us has played. All things being equal, you practice 5 hours a week. I practice 1 hour a week. Who's going to get better? You're going to get better because you've put more time into it. There's no leverage in that. That's the asset that you use. That's the currency you use to build your other assets. So what are the asset areas? Well, one area is relationships. Relationships with people you know, people you love, family, business relationships. This is one area that I have a huge flaw in. Big flaw. I've got a lot of relationships, but I would say that I haven't leveraged them. And I don't mean leverage meaning use, I mean maximize. How do you maximize a relationship? Not for personal gain, but just to maximize a relationship for the relationship's sake. So relationships is one area on this. The next area up is what we're going to talk about today is, processes and frameworks. Processes and frameworks. Meaning your company, when someone buys from you, there's a process they go through. You call it onboarding, you can call it client success, but there's a process. But before they buy from you, what's the process? And that's the marketing and sales process. So how do you generate leads? We're going to talk about that quite a bit tomorrow. What's the framework and the process for sales, which we're going to talk about today? What's the sales process? That is an asset. think about your process as an asset, not something that you have to trudge through, not something you're trying to push your prospect through. By the way, leave any comment. I don't see any yet, but I'm sure we've got thousands, if not tens of thousands of people on. So make sure you leave your comment so I know you're there. But what's the process look like for your customer and for you? That is an asset that allows you to reach higher goals, because now you've got a process that you can just put downward pressure on. You can put more people into the process, and guess what? More people pop out the other end because the process is built for them. So what is the process you have? So let's talk about the sales process here, because the title here is Reinventing Your Sales Process. Here's a fact. 70% of organizations either have no sales process or they don't use their sales process. Personally, I think it's higher than that. Based on what I've seen and based on, companies I work with and prospects I talk to, very few companies have a sales process. Very few. Very few have a marketing process. And I distinguish between the two because I think the marketing process is everything that creates a lead and ultimately creates a phone call, and then the sales process begins. So whether you define marketing and sales as one big bucket, or whether you distinguish like that, we're not going to work on that today. I'm talking about sales process here. It's when a lead is live and active. Someone calls you from a web lead, or you or you get referred into some place, or maybe you are on a podcast and somebody calls you and says, "Hey, I heard you on the podcast. I want to talk to you about my people or my issue." So the sales process begins when there's a conversation. So rest assured, if we have 1,000 people watching this, 200 to 300 of you are using a process and have one. This is probably not for you, although you might learn something. And this is more for the people that don't have one or don't use one. So what are the aspects or factors in a sales process? Well, number one, it's got to be visual. In other words, you have to be able to see it and touch it and feel it. I like having a visual document. And the second reason for that is I want you to share this with your prospect. I want you to be able to say, you don't have to do a show and tell on it, but you can, if you're face to face, say, look, here's the way we typically do things. To find out whether you have something that we can help you with, we have 3 steps. We have a discovery step, we have analysis step, recommendation step, whatever that is. We'll talk about that later. But I want it to be visual. Number 2, there's got to be something in it for them. I would say of the 30% of organizations that have and use a sales process, rarely is there something in it for the prospect. And you say, well, what's in it for the prospect is they buy from me and then they get my solution and then they're happy. No, sales process has to have something in it for them. It could be something as simple as a findings document, where part of your analysis is provided to the prospect. I mean, think about how crazy it is that we expect people to follow our process. A, we barely have one. B, we're not very good at articulating it, which we'll talk about in a jiff here. And 3, they don't know where the hell they're going. And we expect them just to follow us. And if we say, hey, we need a meeting next week with 2 of your top level people, it's like, well, hang on a second. What are we talking about here? So you've got to have a process that is valuable for the client, aside from when they buy from you. I say it's valuable irrespective of whether they buy from you or not. Okay? Number 3 is it must be easy to follow. It can't be the space shuttle design. It can't be a blueprint that has 17 different arrows and if-thens and conditional responses. You can do that internally. I don't even like that internally. I think it just confuses people. Remember, there used to be, if they say yes here, we go here. If they say no here, we go here. Who used that? Nobody used that. Come on. Somebody used it when they designed it and they thought it was cool, and then they bestowed it upon the sales team. The sales team doesn't use it. They left the company and nobody uses them anymore. But it has to be easy to follow. I like 5 steps. I think if you're in a business to business process, where there is a little bit of discovery and analysis and insight and inquiry. And then there's a little bit of you going back to the company, to your company, and thinking through things and looking at the data that was extracted, and then putting together a recommendation and then tweaking it. Four or five steps, not 9 steps, and not 2. 2 in a short-term cycle where it's a one-call close, maybe. But most of you are not in that space. So it's got to be easy. I say 5 or fewer. Is that the way I would say that? No, I would say less than 5. Less than 5 steps. Okay, everybody with me so far? So it's got to be visual, and you can do this yourself on a Word doc. I like it when, I wish I had one here to show you. I like it when the process is nicely done. It's nicely created. Have one of your marketing people or a designer create it. Once you create it on a piece of paper, then give it to them. Number 2 is it's got to have something in it for them. They got to benefit by having gone through it. And 3, it's got to be easy to follow. So if you do those 3 things, now we're going to talk a little bit about what's included in it. And again, I know this is not a sexy thing, process, like, oh God, Bill, can't you talk about the mindset, and can't you talk about how, but I'm talking about how to grow your business. What could be sexier than that, my friend, huh? So the better your process, the more likely you are to grow, because you're going to want to put more people into it because you have confidence in it. Most people don't have confidence in their process. David Allen wrote a book called Getting Things Done back in the, I don't know, probably 80s or probably 90s. And his supposition was that a lot of times we stop new business from coming because we can't handle the business we have, because our processes and our frameworks are all jacked up. And we say, well, man, I'm working 60 hours a week working on 5 prospects now. How would I have time for 5 new prospects? And so we stop prospecting because we know intuitively we couldn't handle it if we got them. So why would we do that? I'm guilty of that sometimes. When I get real busy, I stop prospecting because I think, well, what am I going to do with them? And that's wrong. What I need to do is be working on my systems, on my marketing systems and sales systems. Okay. So how do we do this? We do this way? I think I'll do it this way. We'll just do it up there. Okay. Digital. You think this is paper, this is digital. Actually, AI is what it is. The brand is AI, the brand of paper. Okay. So what should your sales process look like? And again, as I said, I think it's important to have several steps. I'm going to do 5 here. You don't have to do 5. You can condense it. Step number 1, there's got to be some type of discovery, some type of discovery of them. You're discovering what their needs are, what their issues are, and discovery of you. They need to create trust. I mean, the goal here is to create some sort of trust between you and your prospect. Both ways, by the way, both ways. And so what's that discovery? What does it look like? And we're not going to get all the way details into that. We're going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow in the webinar. By the way, have I told you about the webinar? I don't think I did. I have a short-term memory loss. There it is. How to use leverage to grow your business. Bill Caskey Masterclass. Okay, back to it. Number 2 is I'm going to use the term others. And this usually starts with one person. There's one person who you have a conversation with. But at some point, if you're in a complex sale, there's going to be others who want to be involved. Maybe some on your team, maybe some on their team. So what do others look like? If you are always talking on one person, maybe you just call on the CEO, there's never others, nix that. That's not it. So this is step 1, this is step 2. All right. So you're going to bring others into the conversation, and those others will have different perspectives. So you'll get one perspective from the first person, you'll get other perspectives here. That's a good thing. I want to understand all perspectives, because the 4th person who comes into this meeting may have something the other 3 people miss. And if I don't get their perspective, I miss something important. So that's that. And then at some point, you're going to want to analyze, DOA, dead on arrival. You're going to want to analyze what you found from these two calls or these two meetings. And by the way, these aren't necessarily meetings, these are steps. If you're in a complex sale, if you're selling electronic software to Boeing, it's not going to be two steps and you're going to analyze. There are going to be a lot of these meetings. You may have a couple of these where you're just one-on-one, until which time there's trust, and then you have several of these. So I'm not thinking about these as meetings. I'm thinking about these as categories of meetings. Typically, it's one or two, but again, you'll have to decide what that is. And I'm not opposed to you writing this down too on your document. That way, the person who you're speaking with totally understands. You might even put down here, if you typically have 2 meetings with them, and maybe 3, you could put the 3rd meeting and just put a dot in parentheses so you can explain to them. Look, the reason I want to explain it to them is I want them to know they're in good hands with you. There's nobody else is doing this. And not nobody, very few are doing this. You show up in a meeting and you're able to have a conversation about these kinds of things, you're going to be shocked at how many people will say, this is perfect. This is exactly what we need. I've had people say this, oh, Bill, this is exactly what we need. We've been looking for this and we're trying to figure out how to find it. We can't find it. So I want it to be visual. Okay, what's next step? I'm glad I have long arms for this. The next step is a recommendation. And these are not going to spell something, by the way. I know you're hoping, you're thinking, Duard, Duarty, Duari, Dwar. They're not going to spell something, or they might, but it's not going to mean anything. 4 is recommendation. At some point, you're going to do the analysis and you're going to come back to them with a recommendation. You can call it, I don't like the word proposal. I don't like the proposal step. To me, it seems like proposal sounds like you're selling them something. What's your proposition? What are you proposing? I'm okay with the word offer, which is inviting people into an offer. I love the term recommendation. I just think it has it positions you properly in the sales process versus proposal. But that also might be what it is. So what happens in the recommendation phase? Well, you have to decide if these people are over here too. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. You have to decide, do I want these people in the recommendation or do I just want him or her? That's your call. But a recommendation could be things like, it could be a virtual presentation of here's the pricing, or here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to do it, here's how we're going to roll it out. I think it's important for the delivery to be in here somewhere. So you say, look, in the event, I love this line. I learned it about 20 years ago. I still use it and all my clients use it. In the event we work together, let me tell you what it looks like. That should be in your recommendation phase. Now you might say, well, that should come earlier. Yeah, maybe, but also down here, because you're going to review what you've done so far as you make that recommendation. You're going to say, look, we met 3 times with D1. We had 4 meetings in the O column. We went back and analyzed it. I brought my subject matter experts in, and here's our recommendation. And in the event you take us up on this, we'll also share with you later what it looks like to work with us. Man, nobody does that. Nobody does that. Why am I whispering? Nobody does that. So delivery here should be a part of that recommendation. What does delivery look like? What's it look like to work with us? And I like to think of it as, I've always felt like we do a pretty good job in the sales process, but then the relationship process, we don't do a very good job of. But at some point when money changes hands, you move into client success. Are we really good at explaining what client success looks like? Or do we say, hey, call me if you have any problems? That's usually what we say. So client success should be a process, just like sales should be a process, just like marketing should be a process. But we spend a lot of time up here, not so much time there. But I want you to be able to tell the customer, what does it look like to do business with us? All right. Let's see, comments, good. Everybody's good. Hopefully you can see this. I think my marker needs a little ink. So here's my assignment for you as we close today. I want you to take out a piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, or my favorite, the 11 by 17 you can buy at FedEx. Very smooth, it's laser paper, and you can get a nice ink pen. Anyway, I digress. And start mapping this out. If you haven't, don't go to a designer until you fully mapped it out. Now, what would you put underneath each one of these? You might even put, I've got one client, I have several clients who do this, but one specifically is really good at it. They put all the questions that they will ask during meeting one, all the questions. So there's no confusion. When you, in fact, well, they have I have probably 2 or 3 sales professionals who, when they show up and share the process, they will tell the prospect exactly what they're going to ask and what they're looking for and what they're hoping to do. And they'll also tell how they're going to tell their story. And they're going to acquaint the prospect with the company story and how they do business and the kinds of clients they work with. It's all mapped out. It's not, you do not wing it here. Of all the steps, this is where all that trust gets built. And the more specific you are and the less you wing it, the better. So assignment number 1 is map this out. Get an 11 by 17 paper and start mapping. Then you could get some other eyes on it, that's fine. Or if you say, no, it's good, take it to a designer. Put it up, set it up at $5 or probably $15. We had a guy create a process for us, actually for the program tomorrow, and it was really well done. I spent $30 on it, or $35, something like that, $40. I don't know what it was, but it was cheap. I mean, $40 is 6 of those, and it's an asset that you can take with you forever. You might tweak it. You might go back to the designer in a couple of weeks, say, hey, I'm working, I need something here. That's fine, but it's an asset. Think about this as an asset. Remember, we said that you want to leverage your business, and you do so right here with assets. And one of the assets is processes. Why do I keep, I guess I'm sales process. Processes and frameworks is one of those assets. Get this right. Tune in tomorrow. I'll give you one more shot at the invitation, how to use leverage to grow your business and income in 2024. Free Masterclass, January 31st. That's tomorrow, 12 noon. Go there. Make sure you get on the, even if you can't make it, we will be sending out a replay. The replay won't be available that long, though. We're not going to do one of these things where it's available for a year. It might be available for a couple of days, but even if you can't watch it live, I would definitely make sure I went there and watch it. All right. Hope this has been helpful. Sales process, reinvent, work on it today. Get that 11 by 17 at FedEx, make a special trip to FedEx. I don't care if it's 100 miles away, go there. Paper is worth it. All kidding aside, just use 8.5 by 11 and start mapping. All right. BillCaskey.com. I'm really glad you're here. See you next time.